Ignatius Press and the Augustine Institute present The Formed Book Club. Catholic book lovers unpacking good books, chapter by chapter. If you like us, please help us by subscribing and by reviewing us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you might listen. And don't forget to sign up for weekly updates and study questions at formedbookclub.ignatius.com.
Welcome back to the Formed Book Club. We will continue and perhaps conclude our discussion of In Defense of Sanity, essays by Chesterton. We have 5 essays left. Even I'm getting a little tired of Chesterton, although I must say, each time I read an essay, I enjoy reading it, so that's not a problem. I do want to, at the end, the last essay, there's a couple of typical Chesterton aphorisms I'll like to include with my point on this, but let's go ahead. I'll pass the baton on to either of you. Scipio and the Children, page 351, Scipio Africanus.
I was just going to refer to the middle of the last full paragraph of page 353. He's talking about someone he met while he was in Spain. He was patently one of those who think that all those things happened such a long time ago that they cannot make much difference now. But it had suddenly occurred to me that this rather remote example really might perhaps make a great deal of difference now. Talking about Scipio. I tried to tell him so, and he must have formed the impression that I was raving mad. And basically then gives the example of Carthage. Would it be all the same, I asked, if that little boy playing with bows and arrows, were thrown into a furnace as a religious ceremony when his family went to church on Sunday? That is what Carthage did. It worshipped Moloch and sacrificed batches of babies as a regular religious ritual. That is what Scipio Africanus did. He defeated Carthage when it had nearly defeated the world. Somehow I seem to feel a fine shade of difference.
Okay, now since you brought that up, we do need to give some background here. That Chesterton is in Spain, quite unusually. He's in Tarragona, and he comes across in a pub, I think, this tourist who seems to have no understanding of any history of Spain. And so Chesterton points out, well, actually, there's a little difference between Spain as it would have been had Scipio Africanus not defeated the Carthaginians, in which case they would have been tributary to the religion of the Carthaginians, which had child sacrifice, or whether Scipio won, in which case the Roman gods temporarily would be in charge. And he concludes, my companion did not reply, and I continued to watch the archer, that is, little boys playing bows and arrows instead of being sacrificed to Moloch. And although Apollo was a pagan god, that is a god that the Romans would have accepted, I'm glad that such a sun god slew the Punic Python, Punic being Carthaginian, and that even before the faith, those ancient arrows cast down Moloch for us all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, if you want to see this theme elaborated, read The Everlasting Man.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was exactly the point I was going to make, that basically this is something that Chesterton deals in much more depth in The Everlasting Man. But the point is, of course, that we are where we are now because of what's happened in the past, and even things in the very ancient past, pre-Christian times, such as this example, impacted the world in such a way that we are living in a very different world because of it. So the whole idea of cancelling history is quite frankly dangerous madness.
Well, yes, Thermopylae, if the Greeks hadn't won at Thermopylae, we'd probably be speaking Persian right now. You've got a Scipio Africanus in Carthage. You're at the bottom of Lepanto, in which Europe would have been overrun. You've got Tours and
Malta.
Yes.
There's lots of pivotal battles.
And Vienna in 1683. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Poitiers, Charles Martel.
That's what I was saying, Poitiers, 733. Yeah, that's God is in charge. God, thank God.
Amen.
All right. The philosophy of islands. Well, I mean, Vivian and I are on an island, but it stretches from Canada down to South America. Whereas, Joseph, you come from a much smaller island. So I'm sure you love this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did. I think that the gist of it, the only thing I want to talk about on this again is the final page, 360, about 6 lines down. And I think it's appertaining not just the small nations, but any nations against globalism. This is the real weakness of all imperial or conquering ideals in nationality. No one can love his country with the particular affection which is appropriate to the relation if he thinks it is a thing in its nature indeterminate, something which is growing in the night, something which lacks a tense excitement of a boundary. So, I love this. I mean, I think it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn that talked about the world, all the nations of the world being a beautiful garden, and each of them is a unique flower in this beautiful garden, as opposed to one agribusiness wheat field, which is what the globalists have in mind for us. We all eat the same products, buy the same products, listen to the same music, the same politics.
Even in the United States, we're almost too big to have that kind of patriotism he's talking about, but we still have regional differences that are pretty strong, geographical differences, demographic differences, cultural differences, and so on. We don't want homogenization of that.
No, vive la différence, absolutely.
Speaking of that, I thought that this quote relates very much with our conversation last week about men and women on page 356 toward the top. There are 3 classes of people, for instance, who are in a greater or lesser degree elemental: children, poor people, and to some extent, and in a darker and more terrible manner, women. And then explains the reason why men have from the beginning of literature talked about women as if they were more or less mad is simply because women are natural, and men with their formalities and social theories are very artificial.
I knew you'd like that.
Oh, I loved it. That's why I underlined it. Not really to the point of the philosophy of islands, but I loved it.
Now, I have to say something on the next page, 357 towards the bottom, about his Latin. This has to do with children who avoid the cracks or step on every other paving stone, which I did when I was a kid. I don't know. And so has the church issued a bill, quisquam non pavimente, which I think he meant to be the beginning of a papal encyclical, whoever does not step on the pavement, but that's not Latin at all. That's not quisquam non, that's Latin, but pavimentor is simply non-existent Latin. So Chesterton, like when he quotes poetry, does it from memory, and he often is a little bit off. Well, in this case, even Homer nods. The Latin is a little bit faulty there.
Yeah, unless he was just being funny by being deliberately ungrammatical, which is
that's true. It could be
pavamente. I mean, it sounds like pavement in Latin, doesn't it? I mean, that's the whole point. I think it's just
right.
Okay.
He's just having fun.
All right. I do like this thing, which goes back to what you quoted. I guess Joseph quoted about he's a little Englander. I mean, basically, he doesn't want to have the sun set on the British Empire, wherever you are. But on page 359, leading into that, he says, all things grow more paradoxical as we approach the central truth. But for all human imaginative or artistic purposes, nothing worse could be said of a work of beauty than that it is infinite. For to be infinite is to be shapeless. In the human, God is infinite, but he's not shapeless. But no man really wishes a thing which he believes to be divine to be in this earthly sense, infinite. No one would really like a song to last forever, or a religious service to last forever, or even a glass of good ale to last forever. And this is surely the reason that men are pursued towards the idea of holiness, the course that they have pursued, that they have marked it out in particular spaces, limited to particular days, worshipped an ivory statue, worshipping a lump of stone. They have desired to give to it the chivalry and dignity of definition. I love that. The chivalry and dignity of definition. They have desired to save it from the degradation of infinity, that we're limited beings.
Yeah.
Isn't that actually an articulate defense of the incarnation? that God, the infinite, became something definite so that we could approach him and know him and love him and understand him on another level than what we had before.
Yep. And it's
The Logos, both with an uppercase L and a lowercase l as well, because it's about definition. In other words, language, the way that we understand each other, that if we don't accept definitions, we think every word is infinite, in other words, meaningless, as the deconstructionists do, it's the end of thought. It's impossible to have a conversation. It's impossible to articulate an idea. It's literally the primeval soup.
Or the buzzing of bees, as a famous linguist once said.
Right. The infinite abyss.
All right, so that's the philosophy of islands. Namely, islands have limits to them. They've got borders around them. Let us move then to the artistic side, page 361. He talks about the yellow book and the green carnation. Do you know what those are, Joseph? I have no idea what he's referring to.
Yeah, he's referring to the Le Fin de Siècle, the 1890s, the English decadent movement. So the Yellow Book was a magazine that was coming out where some of the decadent poets and Aubrey Beardsley, the artist, had his illustrations published in. Following Oscar Wilde's downfall, the windows of their offices were smashed, and it became a byword for iniquity. So when he talks about the Yellow Book, and the green carnation again was another symbol of the decadent movement. The whole point about a green carnation is it is sterile. It exists for nothing except itself. So it's like an image of narcissistic sterility. And then this is all referenced if you go down about 10 lines. These things were seen afterwards in the lurid light that shone backwards from the shameful illumination of one individual career. That's Oscar Wilde.
That's what I thought. I'm glad you explained all of that. Also, the green carnation, doesn't Oscar Wilde say somewhere about artificiality that I won't do it justice, but the green carnations aren't green. They have to be dyed that way. So there's an artificiality to it, an artifice to it. And that was one of the things behind it, that natural beauty somehow is like not enough. He would make comments about the need for women to dye their hair and things like this, because natural beauty is in a way that has to be improved. Okay. Right. And in fact, he was abhorred by pregnant women, which shows kind of, Anyway, Oscar Wilde, what a person.
But he ended well.
Hopefully, yes, on this Day of All Souls, let us pray that he made it to the other side.
Well, he received the last rites on his deathbed. It's a good way to go, that's for sure.
Good way to go, a provided for death. May we all have a provided for death.
Page 362, about 8 lines down. This is another version of Chesterton's kind of main theme. I still hold that it is the main earthly business of a human being. Great. What's that going to be? To make his home and the immediate surroundings of his home as symbolic and significant to his own imagination as he can. Interesting. Mm-hmm. You want to make your home or your surroundings a symbol. And don't we do that with a crucifix, with a cross, or even with the potted flowers, and portraits on the wall?
Yeah, I think the point is, I think our homes are a reflection of who we are and who we see ourselves as being. So they are, if you like, a product of our imaginations, and the healthier the imagination, the healthier the home, presumably.
And that's why men need women. I say that as a priest, but I need the church as a woman. But the point is, which of the two, the man or the woman, makes the home a symbol? Makes it livable, puts in knickknacks or little objects or adding things. For us men, as long as there's a stove or refrigerator and a toilet, I mean, we're probably okay.
You don't even need a toilet.
Well, yeah, you can use a shower, I suppose. But...
You just go outside. There's a bush. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Page 365. We are gonna conclude this. This is wonderful. So, what is right with the world? There's a great story about That's what he wrote on, but the editors want to call it What's Wrong with the World.
And we published that book, What's Wrong with the World. It's a fabulous
It's a tremendous book.
C. Chesterton book.
What's wrong with women? What's wrong with men? What's wrong with education? I mean, another great book. We'll discuss that sometime when we have...
After we've gotten Chesterton out of our system for a while, maybe we can do that book. But doesn't he say in What's Wrong with the World that you don't really know what's wrong with the world until you know what's right with it? Doesn't he say that somewhere?
Well, he starts out by saying, what's wrong with the world is me.
Right, that too. But also, like, what is your basis of comparison?
Well, that's right. And his whole point here is that ultimately things are good. They begin good.
They begin good.
You know, and if they go wrong,
you can't know that something. You can't know that something is wrong unless you know what it is to be right.
Correct.
So you have to begin with an understanding of that which is good in order to understand what's wrong.
In fact, you can't even understand what evil is until you know what good is, because all evil is the negation of the good.
That is exactly right. On page 368, new paragraph. We therefore come back to the primary truth that what is right with the world has nothing to do with future changes, but is rooted in original reality. Mm-hmm. And at the bottom of the page, what is right with the world is the world. In fact, nearly everything else is wrong with it.
And again, that's the whole point. As he carries on from there, this is that great truth in the tremendous tale of creation, a truth that our people must remember or perish. It is at the beginning that things are good, and not, as the more pallid progressives say, only at the end. In other words, of course, everything is created good by God, and it's been going wrong since then because of what we've done to it. So the whole idea that, that it began badly and will get better is literally looking at things the wrong way round.
Unless you're looking through the prism of the redemption. And so now what we're seeing is creation is good, fall, not so good, but the redemption, the recreation, the new creation is good. In fact, better than it was before. And that's what Christian hope is based upon. And I think it's interesting because he says somewhere, I'm not sure where now, that funny how these progressives seem to have this faith or hope in something, even if they get confused as to that it's built-in progress or built-in evolution or something like this.
It says on page 370, a new paragraph there, I'm much more sure that everything is good at the beginning than I am that everything will be good at the end. That is the human end. We know at the final end is going to be good. Now, this isn't exactly the golden age of theory of history. Everything's getting worse and worse. But the fact is that it began good and very good, as Genesis tells us. Now, I love this at the bottom of page 370, new paragraph there, second line. We are to regard existence as a raid or great adventure. It is to be judged, therefore, not by what calamities it encounters, because we're going to have plenty of those, but by what flag it follows and what high towns it assaults. The most dangerous thing in the world is to be alive. One is always in danger of one's life. But anyone who shrinks from this is a traitor to the great scheme and experiment of being. I love that.
Yeah, I just want one final quote from it as well, page 367. He says, none are more vitally and recklessly otherworldly than those modern progressives who do not believe in another world. Because the other world, of course, for them is the future of their imagination, right? They believe in this other world, the utopia, because they don't believe in the other world as in the supernatural, the metaphysical. The future is this magic place.
But I think you could argue that grain of hope and expectation is something God plants within us, and it just needs to be directed to the right thing, right?
That's right, and it's called eschatology, the promise of the last things, the great things, death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And when you have what's called imminent ties to God, you don't believe in God anymore, or the transcendent end, where is that going to be? It's going to be inside the classless society, the sustainable planet forever. Sorry, that's not going to do it.
And the destruction that is caused by those who are trying to make that happen. So on 372, where he says, this vague idea of unity. It's in the middle of the page. This blending of men and women, nations and nations, is truly a return to the chaos and unconsciousness that were before the world was made. I never thought of it that way before, that this attempt to bring about the unity that God is leading us toward in Him, which somehow includes all the variety and diversity and everything that He creates. But when we try to bring about unity or peace or harmony, what we actually do is destroy and tear down those differences. We're actually uncreating things. That wow, that was
Well, it's true, because you have the Eastern view, nirvana, in which our whole personhood disappears into the one and the all, and that's the final goal, is to lose your personhood, whereas the Christian view of God as Trinity, three persons, one God, distinct individuality, as it were, personality within one nature. That's the goal for us all, to be multiple persons in one divine mystical body.
And to love each other for being other.
yes.
Right? So we don't have to all be the same person, so that we don't offend anybody else.
Do you have handy Chesterton's poem on that? What's it called? It's the guy who's sitting in front of he's having a dream while he's in the pub. He's dreams that the whole world is like himself. He goes to heaven and everyone's like himself.
That would be a nightmare.
Exactly. He has this dream, and but he's wanting to find someone other than himself, and he taps the shoulder of an angel, and who turns with his face, oh my, and he wakes up, and there's a beautiful line which you, Joseph, remember it, but he finds the one thing blessed in all his life, the gin damn drunkard's face, or something like that another person, is a drunk. Shoot. I'll bring, even the next time I may bring that back. One of my favorite poems of Chesterton. Okay, this is a little bit sidebar. 374, new paragraph, second new paragraph. For at present, we all tend to, one mistake, we tend to make politics too important.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says later on, it will be sad if when we have worked for our holiday, we find we have unlearned everything but work.
Mm-hmm. The typical modern man is the insane millionaire who has drudged to get money and then finds he cannot enjoy even money.
And I want to have a long quote here, the end of the essay, page 375. It is true that in a certain acute and painful crisis of oppression or disgrace, discontent is a duty, and shame could call us like a trumpet. That is, are we discontent? Well, of course, because we're always looking for the ideal. We're never going to get it. But it is not true that man should look at life with an eye of discontent, however high-minded. Because it's so hard, it's easy nowadays to see everything and be concerned about it, because it's concerning. But he says, it is not true that in his primary naked relation to the world, in his relation to sex, to pain, to comradeship, to the grave, that is family, suffering, friendship, and death, or to the weather, man ought to make discontent his ideal. It is black lunacy.
Yep.
Half his poor little hopes of happiness hang on his thinking a small house pretty, a plain wife charming, a lame foot unbearable, and bad cards not so bad. The voice of the special rebels and prophets recommending discontent should, as I have said, sound now and then suddenly like a trumpet. But the voices of the saints and sages recommending contentment should sound unceasingly like the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thanks for reading that. Yeah, beautiful. Can we go from the sublime to the ridiculous on the next essay?
Spice of life, okay.
Right, sublime to ridiculous, because from that wonderful sublime quote you just read, I just wanted to just read the quote at the bottom of page 377. I have even played golf in Scotland before Arthur Balfour brought it to England and it became a fashion and then a religion. I just thought I wanted to mention that about golf. There we are. But
I
also,
want to go 3 lines above that. This is a beautiful expression here. All healthy people will agree that you never enjoy a game to enjoy being beaten at the game.
Right.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's actually the beauty of chess.
Until you enjoy being beaten at it.
What did I say? Sorry.
All healthy people will agree that you never enjoy a game till you enjoy being beaten at it, meaning just playing it for the pleasure of playing it, whether you win or lose. If losing the game causes you to be a sourpuss, that's called bad sportsmanship.
I know a great man, a wonderful man who's a billionaire. He's quite a good ping pong player. But I saw him quit a game when he saw he was going to lose. He said, "Oh no, I'm not going to play anymore because I might lose." Well, to me, that meant you don't enjoy the game. You just enjoy dominating and winning. If you can't win, you're not going to play the game.
How about I'm not going to be a member of this organization unless I'm in charge? I've heard someone say that before too.
I don't remember if it was Oscar Wilde or G.K. Chesterton that said that I wouldn't be a member of any club that would have me as a member.
Right. I was going to say that too.
Yeah.
But it's one of the beautiful things about chess, actually, while we're on games, because chess is that the only way you can get better at chess is to play people better than you, and which means that most of the time you have to lose, because otherwise you just can't get better because there's nothing stretching you.
Well, that's probably true for a lot of things in life, right, Joseph? I mean, we have to learn how to do things, whatever it might be, from people who do it better than we do.
Exactly. Yep.
Another quote I want to recite here on page 378, about 2/3 down. Again, this great wisdom. You have to be happy in those quiet moments when you remember that you are alive, not in those noisy moments when you forget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And then my last one, I think, my last contribution on page 379, just before that new paragraph at the bottom. And I'm confident that there is no future for the modern world unless it can understand that it is not merely to seek what is more and more exciting, but rather the yet more exciting business of discovering the excitement in things that are called dull. I mean, these things really kind of encapsulate the whole philosophy that I mean, he's saying different things all the time, but they really kind of come back to some of these fundamental truths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one thing that I found very heartening in this final one is that that Chesterton was very critical of T.S. Eliot, particularly the early T.S. Eliot, the Prufrock poems, and wrote a wonderful parody in mock modern verse of T.S. Eliot, which is marvelous. But towards the end of his life, Chesterton came to understand that there was more to Eliot than meets the eye. Obviously, once Eliot became an Anglo-Catholic, that all became clear. But what I found very gratifying on page 381 is that Chesterton knows, and understands Eliot's poem "The Wasteland," that everyone thought was basically a call to despair. He sees this wonderful line here. It's about a third of the way down the page, 381. I know very well that Mr. Eliot described the desolation he found more than a desolation he felt. Because this is typical Chesterton. One sentence that basically Eliot is critiquing something which he knows is wrong, and he's not guilty of it. On the contrary, he's pointing the finger of scorn at it. But I think that the wasteland was at least a world in which he had wandered. And as I'm describing the recent world, I may as well describe it as he had described it in The Hollow Men, though nobody would describe him as a hollow man. So again, that he's making this critical distance between Eliot's work and Eliot, the sub-creator of the work. This is the impression of many impressions, and then, of course, this is the way The Hollow Men ends, the poem. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. And of course, the whole he finishes the whole essay with a riposte. Some sneer, some snigger, some simper in the youth where we laughed and sang, and they may end with a whimper, but we will end with a bang. And again, I think that Eliot wouldn't disagree with that, because I always used to see this as, Chesterton butting heads with Eliot. But what Eliot's doing with the Hollow Men, he's pointing at the Hollow Men, which is very much like C.S. Lewis's Men Without Chests in The Abolition of Man. And he's pointing, the Hollow Men, headpiece stuffed with straw. They have no substance. Yet this is the way they will end. Not with a bang, but a whimper. But Eliot's not going to end that way. So Eliot's going to end with Chesterton, no, with a bang.
Well, let's us also not end with a whimper, with a bang. And we thank you all for joining us as we've discussed Chesterton's In Defense of Sanity. Starting next week, we're going to begin Saints and Sinners in the Cristero War. It's a fascinating book about the history of Mexico and the church and the tremendous witness given by so many Mexican Catholics during the Cristero War of 1927 and following. We're going to take, for next week, we're going to take the first 3 chapters, including introduction. So introduction, chapter 1, 2, 3, and we'll discuss that with you next week. Thank you. God bless you.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please help spread the word about the Forum Book Club by subscribing to the podcast and writing a review. You can sign up for weekly updates at forumbookclub.ignatius.com.